Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Seeing Beyond and Through with Monty. Right before you is a HIV surveillance report. And you may be wondering, what is an HIV surveillance report? Well, basically, it's a report that surveillance disseminates data about HIV and AIDS, for example, the number of population rates of HIV diagnosis and the number of people living with HIV and AIDS. Now, you may wonder what prompted me to want to do a video about this particular topic.
Cities with the highest number of HIV cases reported going into 2023. Number 10, Jacksonville, Florida. Number 9, New York, New York. Number 8, Atlanta, Georgia. Number 7, Memphis, Tennessee. Number 6, Baltimore, Maryland. Number 5, Washington, D.C. Number 4, Jackson, Mississippi. Number 3, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Number 2, New Orleans, Louisiana. Number 1, Miami, Florida.
It's the top 10 cities with the highest HIV reported cases 2023. Number 10, Jacksonville, Florida. Number 9, New York, New York. Number 8, Atlanta, Georgia. Number 7, Memphis, Tennessee. Number 6, Baltimore, Maryland. Number 5, Washington, D.C. Number 4, Jackson, Mississippi. Number 3, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Number 2, New Orleans, Louisiana. And number 1, Miami, Florida.
Okay, so in the first video, you seen a white male who seemed to be very enthusiastic about shouting out these numbers of these cities that are supposedly with these high rates. And then you had a black male, which the enemy oftentimes will use black people to disseminate information to black people. Now, black people, I'm going to ask you very respectfully, if you do not understand data, if you have not done research, if you have not read and studied, please stand down. Do not get online on social media repeating something that you do not know is true or false. Because what you're doing is that you're playing right into the hands of the enemies, and you're disseminating a lot of false information that is extremely negative for the whole world to see. Now, with that being said, we're going to dive into this. And I'll give you a little bit of background. I have been studying post-stats and surveys for the past 30 years. I understand the lingo, I understand the language, I understand the methodology of how they use them and how they come about with these numbers. When dealing with black people, HIV, STDs, diseases in general, many times they're over-exaggerated and they are inflated. Now let's dive into this right here. It goes, the South was also found to have the highest HIV-related mortality and morbidity rates in the USA. High levels of poverty, HIV-related stigma, STDs found in the South, particularly targeted. It's basically what they're saying is that the South have just high rates of HIV and STDs. But I need to take you back to 1981, because basically we're 41 years into the epidemic. 41 years into the epidemic. Now, from 1981 to 1990, there was over 177,000 deaths among persons acquired with immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, were reported to the CDC and local and state territorial health departments. Territorial health departments. That's extremely important. Notice right here, they did not say black people, or they did not say black, because from 1981 during 1990, the vast majority of these deaths right here occurred among white males. And keep one thing in mind, HIV and AIDS was a white disease, pretty much it still is, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. It was a white disease during the 80s and the 90s. In the 2000s, around 2014, something happened, and I will explain it. So basically what they're saying right here, this is the history of AIDS. If you can remember, during the early days, they had all these AIDS groups, which were primarily gay white men who were marching. And during the early days, it was called GRID, Gay-Related Immune Deficiency Syndrome. And basically, it was known to have targeted, or primarily the people who were coming down with it were white males. Now, I don't say that happily. I'm not saying that to be vindictive or clapping my hands towards that. I'm just telling you how it was. And there's a reason for that. Because white males at that particular time were the targeted group of a certain hepatitis C vaccine study that was done 1978, 79, New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And strangely enough, about a year or two later, AIDS pops up. And supposedly they're not sure how it came about and where it came from. However, this particular video is not dealing with, the how it came about, or it's not dealing with, what could have caused it. I'm talking about numbers on this video. Actually, I did a video regarding that particular topic about, where it came from, and you can find it. Let's move on though. So basically, we can clearly see that the people who were protesting and who were marching were primarily white gay men in the very beginning. And we had organizations like ACT UP, a whole bunch of them around demanding more federal funding, more AIDS, more attention that should be paid to the disease. Now, here's what's going on today. The South was also found to have the highest HIV-related mortality and morbidity rates in the USA. I think I read that before, but it's good to read it again. And it goes on to say right here, HIV and AIDS in southern USA, a disproportionate epidemic. Now you have to wonder, why is HIV and AIDS a disproportionate epidemic in the South? And this goes on to say right here, high levels of poverty, HIV-related stigma, and STDs found in the South, particularly in targeted southern states, largely contribute to greater HIV incidence. There's a word there that should stand out. It says right there, particularly in targeted. The operative word there is targeted. And we're going to examine that closely. Okay, HIV epidemics. Basically, the targeted states that they're talking about was Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Los Angeles, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas. These states are hereafter referred to as targeted southern states. So people, in the writing right there, they are letting you know that there are certain states that are primarily in the South that are targeted regions where they pretty much are getting information, getting data, gathering research in certain targeted areas. Let's move on. And it goes right here to say African Americans carry a disproportionate burden of HIV in the United States, although they represent only 12% of the total U.S. population. African Americans account for an estimated 44% of all new HIV infections. This is very interesting, because the reason why I say this is very interesting is because how can a disease that is supposedly through sexual contact, which everyone is having sex, start off as a gay white male disease for the first 20 years. Then all of a sudden, after a 20-year period, it turns into a black disease, where those who are being affected are black people. You tell me, how can that happen? And we're going to examine something even farther. AIDS was reported to the CDC by local, state, and territorial health departments. Almost 1/3 of these deaths were reported during 1990. You see that right there? State and territorial health departments. So basically, again, there are certain territories where they are gathering data and information. What they are supposed to be doing, they're supposed to be gathering data and information from all 50 states. But they do not do that. They pick and choose, pretty much cherry pick. So therefore, they can have their desired outcome. HIV rates in young black gay men strikingly higher, despite fewer risk behaviors. Isn't that very telling? They claim that HIV rates in young black gay men are strikingly higher despite fewer risk behaviors. So basically, what they're telling you right here is that, let me read this. Perhaps more noteworthy is that young gay black men reported lower rates of sexual risk behaviors, fewer sexual partners. Does that make any sense? Now, this is not mathing at all. So you have a disease that was overwhelmingly among white gay men. All of a sudden now, it's striking. The vast majority today, supposedly, are gay black men, despite the fact that these gay black men have fewer sexual partners than white men do, and they have less riskier behavior. And that simply means not using a condom. That's interesting how it came to this particular point. But we're going to get to as to why it came to that particular point. But here's the thing. In that video, you heard the guy say the 10 cities with the highest HIV AIDS rates. And now right here, I want to show you something. This is the 10 cities with the highest LBGT percentage in the United States of America. So this is where the vast majority of gay men live. Pay attention to this right here. First of all, number one is San Francisco. San Francisco has the largest gay male population in the United States of America. Now I want to show you something else right here. 10 cities with the highest LBGTQ percentage in the U.S. Now watch this. These are the 10 cities right here. Portland, Oregon, Austin, New Orleans, Seattle, Boston, Salt Lake City, Los Angeles, Denver, and Hartford, Connecticut. People, none of these cities right here with the highest population of gay men are on that list. None of them. So basically what they are doing, they're making a concerted effort to get their desired outcome as to who they want to represent HIV and AIDS. They have made the face of HIV and AIDS a black disease. Pretty much what they've done. Gay black men and black women. Why are you taking a group of people who are not the vast majority of gays in America? By the way, white gay men, LGBTQ community overall, outnumber black men like 7-1. So if they outnumber you 7-1, and the vast majority of white gay men are having sex with other white gay men, how could black gay men possibly account for the vast majority of those with HIV and AIDS today? That does not make any sense. But I'm going to show you how they came to that conclusion. Okay, HIV epidemics. Here we go again. Now watch this. Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Los Angeles, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. These states are hereafter referred to as targeted southern states. The other states with the vast majority of gay white men, they're not targeted. They're not looking for information. They're not getting data or surveys. They are targeting certain areas. And what's so ironic about this is that they are telling us what they are doing. They're not trying to hide it. So it's really strange that so many black people go along with this. They believe what the CDC is telling them. And the CDC, of all information things, really, you're believing them? The same organization from 1968 to 72 participated in the Tuskegee experiment syphilis study. And who did not want that study to end? They wanted it to go on. The same study that's today, within the past 3 years, have told us a lie about a particular snake bite remedy. So basically, this organization right here, you can clearly tell they have a vendetta against black people. They want black people to be the face of HIV, AIDS, other STDs. They are disseminating this around the world. And when black people participate in this type of information and put it online and post it, they are helping to do their bidding. Let's move on. Okay, HIV surveillance reports. That's pretty much what that is. So HIV surveillance reports disseminate data. I read that to you about HIV and AIDS, for example, populations, HIV diagnosis, numbers of people. Or it's good to read that again, though. That's pretty much what that means. Now, I want to show you something that's very telling. Remember this. 1981 is when HIV was first recognized. So we're 41 years into the epidemic. In the UK, 41 years into the epidemic also. I studied stats on the UK statistics. And the UK has obviously a majority white population. They have a minority of black people there who are not the majority. But look at this right here. See the discrepancy compared to the United States of America. Ethnicity. Over half of people receiving HIV specialist care in the UK in 2019 were white. Do you see that? 53,621. That's 54% were white people. Black people, black or African, it was 28,525 or 28.7%. This is very telling because this is more correct. And I say it's more correct is because it started off in gay white men. If it started off in gay white men, it should still hold steady with that in gay white men, considering the very fact that it is an epidemic based upon supposedly sexual activity. Vast majority of white men are having sex with other white men. The vast majority of white men are being safe with other white men. So therefore, it should ride high the same way it did 41 years ago. It should be the same as today. There's no such thing as somehow it started off 40 years now into the epidemic or pandemic, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden now, the vast majority of black men are getting it in the United States of America when they are more safer and report fewer sexual partners. And those of you who may be homophobic, yes, black men do have fewer sexual partners. The reason being because of the church. Black men have a much more difficult time accepting their sexuality. They're kind of like in the closet, out of the closet, in the closet, out of the closet. It could be a constant battle that can last for years. Whereas white men tend to accept their sexuality at an earlier age and continue on with the flow. Okay, let's look at this right here. So basically this graph right here is from the UK. The lighter blue right there represents the white population with HIV and AIDS. The darker blue to the left represents the black African population with AIDS. Other lines right there, other colors right there represent so-called biracial people that could be half black, half white. But if we were to really look at that, raise it up, even if you combine all of those together with the black population, it would still not be more than the overall whites in the UK. So this is very telling. How is it that the American black population all of a sudden is superseding this? It does not make any sense at all. Here it goes right there. The other colors there. Black Caribbean 2%, 2.8. Black other 2.5. Asian 4%. Others mixed 5%. That's just to bring you a close-up of that particular graph. Now, I'm going to show you something else. I just showed you that right there in the UK. Even if we go across to Canada, surveillance reports for 2019 for HIV and AIDS. Once again, 41 years into the epidemic, and it says clearly right here, race ethnicity information was known for 880 cases. Of 41.5% in 2019. Of the cases known race ethnicity, 30.7% were reported as white, 25.5% as black, and 24.7% as indigenous or First Nations in Canada. Once again, Canada, just like the UK, when the vast majority of the population is one race, that is the whole race of people who tend to have more of the infections or the disease. So it's strange how the United States has kind of like reversed itself with there, where you have a minority population who have more of it than the dominant population. Boy, can we talk and speak statistical sleight of hand. is what we're dealing with. So here's what they are doing in hindsight. They're basically doing all their surveying and testing as they admit it. You seen right there what they admitted, not my words. They admitted that. They have targeted states and cities in which they collect data from. A vast majority of the people who live in these particular areas and cities tend to be disproportionately black. Black, and some would say Latino, but I'm going to focus on black people because their focus is on black people. And I want to show you something else. Okay, so before I go on into what I want to show you, I just want to tell you something. I find that the gay white community does not like when I speak about this particular issue. I have gotten a lot of pushback from the LGBT gay white community. And ironically, because of cognitive dissonance, I got some pushback from blacks also within the LGBT community. It seems like people have a very difficult time believing that their government had lied to them. And even with what's going on today, so many people were taking this particular remedy within the past 3 years. They believe what the government has told them. So I'm not really surprised about that. And I want to say this too. I'm not doing this because of pride and ego, because I'm a black man and they're making somehow us look bad as black people. If this were really the case, if this were really the truth, then I would be doing black people very much a disservice by lying, by telling us something that is not true. I mean, this surveys and these stats right here, what I have found within the past 30 years is that to get these numbers, they pretty much oversample black people. They make black people the vast majority of the study participants or those who they are studying are getting data from. They go into primarily black neighborhoods. They take from government-funded clinics that are typically used by black, Hispanic, and poor people. So I want to show you this graph right here. And if you look at this graph right here, it goes like this. Employed, the people who were employed was like 2,254. Unemployed was 2,436 people. So basically, what does that tell you? The unemployed people were the vast majority of those who they surveyed and polled. So basically, wouldn't that tell you that they are below the poverty line and they must be utilizing some type of government-funded clinics? And I told you the vast majority of the people who tend to use government-funded clinics. Now, right here, I want to show you something too. It says healthcare. Healthcare, it goes yes at the top of healthcare insurance. It's 1,471. And no, it's 3,879. So the vast majority of the people who they got these numbers from was uninsured. That rings government-funded clinics / social services. Poor people translate into black people or people of color. Now I want to show you this right here. Combined yearly income. Look at the top is a low amount, over 19,000. It was 3,269 people. By the way, and right there at the bottom, who made over 75,000 a year, it was only 321. That screams right then and there. There's a big discrepancy as to who they are targeting and who they are getting these polls from. Now, I had told you that oftentimes, majority of the time, they oversample black people. Okay, race, ethnicity from this particular survey from 2014. And don't let that number fool you, because what they tend to do, they take numbers like 2020, 2023, they take them from far back as 2014. They keep recycling numbers because they're too damn lazy to do the paperwork. Now watch this. American Indian, it was 20 people they sampled. Asians, 47. Black or African American, 2,170. Hispanic or Latino, 1,000. What is that? 266. Hawaiian, 13. Now look at this white. 1,504 people. You see that number right there? White people, you only sampled 1,504 people, but black nearly double that. So why are you making black people who are well, this would have been 2014, but even today, these numbers still fly. So why are you making black people who are like 13% of the U.S. population the vast majority of the study participants? And why are you making white people who are like 61% the minority in these study participants? You have to ask that question. And it goes down to them getting their desired outcome. This is what they want to do. They are pretty much statistical sleight of hand. We're moving the pendulum. We're switching things around, and we're going to get our desired effect. And that desired effect is to make black gay men the face of HIV and AIDS, make black women, doesn't matter if you're a lesbian or not, to make them the face of HIV and AIDS, to make black people the face of HIV and AIDS, to make black people overall in America the faces of every STD that is out there. And it's really a shame that they're putting the information out there. You can study it. You can study it. It's right out there on the internet, online, for you to study. But we as black people, they know they can do this to us because we're not going to protest. We're not going to raise our hand. We're not going to sound the alarm. We're not going to do anything. The only thing that we're going to do is to their benefit. We're going to repeat this garbage over. And we are going to get online and disseminate this. They use famous people. They use actors to get this garbage out there who are doing their evil bidding. This work right here is evil. To sit right there and to lie on a whole group of people. And this is another reason why black people deserve reparations. You know, you got to look at what type of damage is this doing to black people when they constantly are hearing negative news and imagery about themselves. They're constantly being bombarded with negative news and imagery about themselves. They're being told that they have the worst disease. This, you're number one here, you're number one there, you're number one here, there, and everywhere. That plays a role as to how you treat each other, how you view yourself. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is some type of mental warfare that is going on that they're doing, knowing that when people hear these things, take them in and believe them, they're going to look down upon themselves and look down upon other black people. They're going to treat other black people bad. And you're going to see the reason why when we constantly have this warfare about black women are the face of STDs or herpes and things like that. To me, that plays a role in black men turning away from black women. I know there are other factors, but I do believe that you have to factor that in. You have to factor that in as to maybe that's why sometimes the self-esteem of some black women who are turning to hair of other races of women, the weaves, the wigs, maybe they're trying to get away from themselves because all these negative polls and stats that they are being bombarded with. And let me just tell you another thing too. These polls, these stats, these surveys, they are not an indicator of truth. They are an indicator of power. And when you are in power, you can make polls, stats, and surveys say anything you want them to say. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is another edition of Seeing Beyond and Through with Monty. And I will see you all beyond and through.